See, the sins we commit and the cycle of these baggages that we can get ourselves in, the cycle of sin can often stem from these insecurities, these unmet needs, and unfulfilled desires. There's this need in us, whether it was created by us and the choices we've made, or maybe it was our upbringing, whatever it might be, we have these needs within us, and we want to fulfill them. And sin so often is looking to fill a round hole with a square peg, where we're constantly trying to fill this hole, but we can't seem to satisfy ourselves. Romans chapter 1, verse 21 through 23 says this, because although they knew God, they did not glorify him as God, nor were thankful, but became futile in their thoughts, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Professing to be wise, they became fools, and changed the glory of the incorruptible God to an image made like corruptible man, and birds and four-footed animals and creeping things. See, what Paul is painting, he's painting a picture here. He's essentially describing what we have, called in the Christian community that God-shaped hole in your heart. That we have been created for connection with our God. We have been created for connection with God and connection with one another in light of what God has done for us and in light of who God is. That's the cry of all of our hearts. That's the deepest possible need that we have, is a connection to God and a connection to the people around us. And what Paul is describing here is some people, knowing that God would probably satisfy a lot better, kind of exchange the glory of God for something that God made. Exchanging the creator for creation. And don't we do that all the time, guys? We can scoff and laugh at these people that made idols and made, statues of cows and birds and worshiped them. But, man, we worship like way worse stuff. Yeah, that person had a statue of a golden calf in their backyard that they would worship too. But, how often have you watched, Keeping Up with the Kardashians, right? Just silly stuff that we just sacrifice our time at the altar of. You know what I mean? Man, there's just silly stuff that I will bow to. And what I'm doing is I'm exchanging that intimacy with God for something that God made that ultimately won't fulfill me. I'm exchanging the creator for the creation. You see, there are these voids in our lives that have been created by the brokenness of our world, our upbringing, our family culture, our jobs, whatever it might be. There's these voids that pop up in our hearts. There's these voids that pop up in our lives. And here's what we're not doing here. We're not doing a blame sesh. Well, my, parents never, we're not doing that. But it's inevitable, right? The people in our lives are going to disappoint us. The things in our lives are ultimately going to fall short. No matter how good of parents you have, no matter what kind of opportunities you had outside of childhood and high school, no matter what type of people you had in your life, here's one universal, inevitable human experience is life can disappoint us. And as we seek to fill these voids, we can get into trouble. As we seek to fill these voids, we can get into trouble. Like the woman who seeks out multiple boyfriends, or the workaholic who seeks the approval of his parents, we can start to get frantic and we can start to make bad choices because we have these voids and these needs and these desires that have been unmet. When faced with, and so we get in this cycle of sin because we tried something, it ended up not satisfying us, but it's better than nothing, and so we just keep spiraling. And here's the thing with sin, guys, and we have to be really careful. We have to be really careful, especially if you're a seasoned believer, especially if you're someone who is in a place of leadership over someone's life, someone who's a mentor, or maybe you're a parent, or maybe you just have people in your life that really struggle and wrestle with habitual sin. Here's the temptation for us. The temptation for us is to look at someone's sin and say, well, man, they're just not willing to change. They continue to sin because they just don't want to change. They continue to sin because they're lazy. They continue to sin because they're uneducated. They continue to sin because I guess they just don't love God enough. They continue to sin because they want to be there. If you're in a place of leadership, if you're in a place of mentorship or discipleship over someone else's life, be very careful of simplifying people's sin. Sin is complicated, isn't it? Sin is wildly and vastly complicated. The reason someone sins, never think you got it nailed. Never think you got it nailed down in your mind as to why someone's struggling in that addiction, or why someone's struggling with this dysfunction in their lives, why someone just continues to be a bad parent or a bad husband or wife. Like, never think you totally have someone pinned and figured out. Sin is complicated, and it's never as easy as just, well, stop, right? Well, stop it. We want that, don't we? Because if sin is simple, then we can simply fix it. And if we can simply fix it, we don't need God. That's why every legalist I know wants to simplify sin to just a matter of will. Every legalist I know wants to chalk up sin as just laziness and a lack of ethic. Do you know why that is? Because the legalist wants to believe that they just changed because they tried hard enough. Well, I did it. I got out of that. I got out of that sin. They should be able to too. Well, they aren't you. And do you know who knew this really well? Is Jesus. Jesus understood the depth of human depravity and the patience needed to address it. In Mark chapter 2, we have a group of Pharisees that are addressing Jesus in a way. Well, they don't directly address Jesus. They are passive-aggressive about it. They say this, Mark 2, verse 15. Now it happened, as he was dining in Levi's house, that many tax collectors and sinners also sat together with Jesus and his disciples. For there were many, and they followed him. And when the scribes and Pharisees saw him eating with the tax collectors and sinners, they said to his disciples, "How is it that he eats and drinks with tax collectors and sinners?" Stop right there, really sad. We've talked about this. We talked about this in previous weeks. They don't address Jesus. You notice that? They talk to Jesus' disciples. They don't address Jesus directly, right? And so when Jesus heard it, he said to them, "Those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick. I did not come to call the righteous, but sinners to repentance." Jesus engaged in the process of healing hearts, of drawing people into repentance by being with them, living amongst them, doing life with them. And he does this with you and I. You have a God who is patiently working with you. You have a God who is enduring your shortcomings and slowly but surely weeding out and refining out all of that sin that you found yourself ensnared in. We have a patient and long-suffering God.